All right. Now, the second story I want to share with you has to do with accounts receivable. I remember this was after I purchased a pest control company who's using a software that they just swore by. They said this software was the coolest thing since sliced bread. It could do so many things. And I was using my own software that I was pretty happy with, but I really had to determine what software am I going to use and actually run with and integrate either my system, my data over to their software or vice versa. And the clincher came to me when it came to accounts receivable. Now, I had literally a KPI that I just pulled out of a hat. It was literally just a wish, which was I wanted my accounts receivable, which is how much money people owed me based on off of the money that I billed. I wanted it in the pest control world to be less than 0.5% of the annual recurring revenue. So if I had a business that was doing $1 million every year in recurring business, I wanted 0.5% of that, which is $5,000 in accounts receivable or less. So if I was doing $1 million a year, I wanted less than $5,000 in accounts receivable at a time. That was my goal. I didn't know what the industry was. I just pulled it out of a hat, and that's what I went off of. But I remember this system could not, for the life of it, determine what the accounts receivable ratio was. In fact, it couldn't even tell me what the annual recurring revenue of a client was. In order to pull that data, this is what I had to do. I literally had to go in, pull a report, download a report to Excel for every single customer that told me what their service value was. And then I had to go in and multiply how many services they were getting a year, and then do that math. I had to take the sum of all of that, divide it by the total number of clients, and then I had to go in and subtract all of the ones that were one-time services. And I did it. And it took me like 4 hours to do it correct the first time. And so I tried to like systematize that and do that as quickly as possible. And I got it down to where it took me about an hour. And I was like, okay, I guess that's not like horrible, an hour to do it. But here's the thing with accounts receivable. My KPI, that 0.5% of the annual recurring revenue, is literally the same goal as my critical driver. So I didn't just need to do this report once a month. I had to do it every single day to determine whether or not I was on track for the day. And it didn't make sense for me to, in order to have the correct data, to spend an hour every single day just to determine what the recurring revenue was for the customer base. And then once I had that, I had to go in and I had to calculate what all of the accounts receivable was. And then it was simple math, right? I take the accounts receivable divided by the annual recurring revenue, and it gave me the ratio. Okay, was it above 0.5%? Was it below 0.5%? Yes or no? And I turned over to the system that I was using, and I clicked the main page, and it opened up this dashboard. And I could move the dashboard around, and here's what I did. The first thing on the dashboard shows me, boom, it does the math for me automatically, every single day, live. Here's your annual recurring revenue. Next thing, right next to it, I could move it up to it, and it would tell me, boom, automatically, here's your accounts receivable. All I had to do was pull out my phone, accounts receivable divided by annual recurring revenue, boom, and it would give me the answer. And that, to me, is how simple I want my data to be. So when you're going, and so I pulled all of the customers that was in one database, which this company I bought was actually bigger than my existing company at the time. So I was like tempted to go use their system. And it did have a lot of capabilities that I really liked, but it didn't have the methods to pull the data in a cost-efficient, effective, automated way that I was happy with. And so I ended up pulling the bulk of all of the customers, and moving them over to my software. And so I shared this story for a couple of reasons. One is to show you that you may have to do some digging. You may have to really figure out, it's not as simple as, can I do this? you really have to use your intuition somewhat to determine, is this method reasonable for me? You know, is it effective? Is it efficient? Is it worth it? And if the answer is no, if it takes too much time or labor or takes too long, if it's not live, you know, so there are some systems where you can outsource it and it'll take 2 weeks to give you an answer. But running your business, you need live decision making, right? You need to know whether or not the data is answering your question or not. And sometimes you can't wait 2 weeks to get that answer. And so I use this example to show you that it's not as simple as just having a solution. It's really digging, and this is where the collaboration comes in, to find the right system that can give you the data in the right way, in an automated and as simple way as possible, so that you can focus on the critical drivers and focus on the KPIs rather than focus on the labor just to determine the data. You want the data to be as automatic as possible. Hopefully that story was helpful. Now let's go ahead, dive in to your business. Let's solve some data systems steps for you.